afternoon, everybody. Thank goodness we got this up on Facebook Live. With Zoom, we've been working on it this week, and sometimes it's working and sometimes it's not. But I've got a very special guest with me this afternoon on Person of Interest, and I'm so excited. We have a mutual connection through our good friend Tim Story and Amy Van Slambrook, right?
You got it right, yes.
Was introduced to me by Two Market Media, which is a media company that I use out of New York City. And we're actually working on a new book deal with them. And so I'm just so excited to have you on Person of Interest because I'm very intrigued by some things that will be valuable, I think, for our audience. Amy is a therapist and coach. She uses her personal journey of healing lifelong traumas to help other people do the same by giving voice to the unhealed wounds affecting their lives and their relationships. 20 years of experience. So you would consider yourself a life coach and a therapist. And I'm really interested, Amy, in how childhood traumas affects us later in life. As a coach, and I do not have a degree or background in psychology. All my degrees are in education or leadership, but I have been coaching people since I was 15 years old. And now I'm 43, so 28 years, and I have seen patterns, and I have seen conditioning, and I constantly get asked questions about nature or nurture, or especially during times of adversity, how some people contract, some people expand. So let's just start off with swinging for the fence here on Person of Interest. And let's talk about how childhood traumas would affect a person going through some of the experiences that we're going through today.
Well, absolutely. It is such an honor to be with you today, Coach Burt. You know, it is obviously an unprecedented time. Everyone keeps using that word. And these sorts of times really make us regress back into some of the most basic coping mechanisms we have. So I explain childhood trauma kind of like when a sapling is growing, you know, when a young tree is growing. And if you took an axe and you made a notch in the tree, you know, all of the rings of the tree would grow in the shape of that notch. It would forever be impacted. It isn't that those outer rings have as big a dent, but they're all going to be impacted by it. And childhood trauma is like that. Forever alter the way that you respond. Now, I believe, and my approach is that we can turn it into somebody's strength, but until you've done the work of healing and really understood the lesson or the message that was within that wound, you know, what you are needing as a result of it, it sort of stays an injury. And so we really have to work to understand the message of it and what people are needing. And that can really be their superpower in understanding how to really navigate and be successful in times of crisis.
So when you think about it, I've always, I heard Tony Robbins talk about during his childhood, his mother was very controlling. You know, she poured liquid soap down his throat. She made him quit everything. And I heard him talk about one day that he probably would not have become this man, this Tony Robbins character, if his mother had been everything that he wanted. So should he go back and thank her, or should he be mad at her? You know, I grew up, I did not have a close relationship with my father early on in my life. I was raised by a single mother who had me when she was 16 years old, and it was kind of a kid raising a kid, right? And many years later, I would go on to write the book Person of Interest. And I've always wondered, did I write Person of Interest because Person of Interest is about becoming known, right? And because for so many years of my life, maybe I felt like I wasn't known by my own father. So talk a little bit about how it affects a person later in life as it relates to, I know their personality is who they are. Like we study disc profile, but talk a little bit about these things. At what year does it really affect? Because I have a 7-year-old daughter, and a lot of people say before years 7 and below, it's a very instrumental time in a person's life. What type of things do people pick up in those first 7 years?
Well, those first 7 years are really pivotal in establishing trust and mistrust. You know, whether you can trust your environment, trust the people who are supposed to care for you, or if you're constantly suspicious, you know, doubting or uncertain, not sure what you're going to get. And that can make us overly clingy or overly distant, you know, or if you had a parent who was there 1 minute and then you couldn't count on them the next minute, that's going to make you somebody who probably gets close and then will distance,
Mm,
because you don't know what you're going to get. So you're going to always be kind of bobbing and weaving, so that you don't get hurt. That's really what we're trying to avoid. We don't want to have that injury that hurt as badly as it did when we were a child. And I think in your particular case, Coach Burt, that makes so much sense, because not only do you work to help people be seen, but you also really try to hear their true voice, and you allow them to speak up and be heard. You allow them to be recognized as important and valuable and worthy. And those may have been messages that you struggled with and wrestled with as a child, because when one of our parents, even if we didn't have the chance to meet them, it's still an abandonment.
mhm.
If it happened before you were born, there's an innate sense, that something is missing. And I believe that's just how God designed us.
Right.
And he can certainly turn that into a real asset in your life after a lot of pain.
Right. Now, a great answer. And thank you for that, because I think, in essence, you're helping people. You're in a different type of coaching than I am. I do coach. Some people consider me their life coach. I really consider myself a business coach, but because of my background of studying the whole person theory, and I was such a deep disciple of Covey's, that I'm kind of a personal growth person first, business coach second. Now, I have seen two tendencies during this cycle of uncertainty. I have seen person A that immediately contracts, operates from a place of fear, wants to cut everything, really creates a lot of worry and this stress, which creates disease, as we know. And then I've seen a person that says, no, 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 I'm coming out fighting, like I'm expanding. I will, kind of this mindset that it's going to be a fight, but I'm going to find a way to win. So when you think about this, what shapes that? Because I see very clearly as a coach these two types of people, right? One person is scared to death. I don't know. I'm not making any decisions. One person is coming out swinging. What contributes to that?
A lot of that I really believe is something we're born with. It's a genetic disposition, because you can either fight or you can flight,
Yep.
take the fight approach, or you can do what we call fawn, which is actually pleasing people to try to navigate the crisis. So you're fleeing or you're fawning or you're fighting. And because we see those responses very early on in childhood, even in cases of abuse where it's very young, 2 and under,
Mhm.
I really believe a lot of it is innate. It can also be an established thing when you've had to navigate a trauma. So if you learned, hey, if I fight, that's how I'm going to survive this, that's what you're going to default to. Whatever sort of worked in the past, even though it was coping with something that was just horrific, that's what you're going to default to without even having to think about it. When we can calm that part of the brain down, the amygdala down,
Mhm.
we can have a more intentional response. We can appreciate the early response. Thank you for serving me when I was 2, but it's not serving me right now. So
Right.
let's choose a different response. That's when we really start to see some agility built and some strength built, because the more you do that, as you found, the more confident you feel.
Right. So when I went through the DISC profile early on many years ago, and I got through and they gave me the results of my DISC profile, I asked the expert, I said, why am I this way? And he looked at me and he said, I'll never forget this, Amy. He said, I wouldn't ask that question. He's like, this is just who you are. Now, how does this play into this? Because I went through the DISC training and become certified in the DISC, and it does help understand how to communicate. It does help understand when a person gets frustrated or how they respond to scenarios. How does that play into this equation when you're coaching a person? I mean, because certain strong personalities or other personalities need different things. How does that play into what you do?
Well, I work primarily with women and couples. And so in women, when we're doing more individual work, whatever has worked in the past is obviously what we're going to use again. So if you're a high D on the disc profile, yes, there's a part of you that was born that way, but I also believe we have reinforcement. So if you found a lot of success with that, if you were praised for that, if you were recognized for that, you're going to learn to build that muscle. You know, just like when you're playing in a game, you're going to default to those superpowers that you have on the court. And so I really believe that's how the disc sort of plays with both nurture and nature. Then when you factor in a marriage or a relationship on top of that, you can get somebody who may be a really different personality type when they're on their own. But if they're with a particularly unhealthy partner, it can diminish that, or it can create a lot of conflict, you know, if those two personality types don't mesh. And so again, that's where it distills down at some point in our work to some early childhood messages for both people. And when you can learn to heal those, it's a really beautiful thing, because then you can appreciate those parts of each other. You know, even if you're completely opposite ends of the spectrum on the disc profile, you can learn to complement each other when they're brought out for the right reasons. I hope that gets at your question.
Yeah. So when you see lots of conflict obviously you said you start off by working with women, right? And then you start to discover that there's a bigger picture here. There's conflict most likely in a relationship, right? Or is it most likely between a husband and wife, or relationship, or is it between the kids? I mean, where do you typically see the conflict, and what is the cause of that conflict many times? Just two opposite belief patterns, I mean, what is the source of that?
Right. A lot of times, if it is a marriage, and I work with married couples, I work with moms and daughters, I work with, you know, some friends, but not a whole lot of those kinds of relationships. Generally, it's in that immediate family that I'm working with people, but a lot of couples. And we choose people who are going to actually wound us in the same way we were wounded as a child. That's, you know, something that Harville Hendricks has established and other theorists. And it's pretty fascinating to watch, because you start out as very different people. You know, you are what the other person is waited for, and they know you like nobody else has. And they're able to read things about you that nobody else has gotten. But as you get closer and closer into that circle of intimacy, you realize, oh, and they can hurt me like that person did as well. And it's not intentional. What we found is that when we actually understand more about the wound that happened and what the other person is needing, when you work to heal each other, you actually heal yourself at the same time. And it's a really beautiful process to watch, because it allows the other person to come with their very best intentions, and to recognize the other person is just trying to love you. They're just trying to know how to love you, and they're trying to express their needs to you. We're not that great at doing either of those innately. And we assume that we're going to be that way in the marriage. And then 7 years in, two people are looking at each other saying, oh, this doesn't quite feel what we thought it was going to.
Right. So when it comes to the coaching and counseling, you recommend that on a regular basis, on a twice a month basis? How does it work? How does it work when people start? Is it for a season? Is it forever? Like, talk to the people, because I know lots of people don't go to therapy or counseling because they may see it as a weakness. They may think it's kind of like people don't come to a coach and me because they think it will expose something in them, or so they think it's only for weak-minded people. Speak a little bit to that.
Right, exactly. You know, I tell all of my clients in our first appointment, my whole focus is to work myself out of a job, because I believe that my job is to give them tools. You know, certainly we'll work together as long as we need to. And I've worked with several clients for years and years, but I need to equip them. You know, I don't want to just be a shoulder for them to cry on. I'm going to challenge them. I'm going to give them homework. I'm going to give them action plans. And if they're not able to follow up, then we're going to say, well, what's going on that's preventing that, because that's an issue in and of itself. And so couples will come to me and say, hey, we're noticing that things are getting off track a little bit, especially right now in this pandemic. We're feeling the beginnings of some stress and strain. Often if their parents have been in a high conflict divorce, they'll say, we don't want to get there. So we do more coaching, and it's about strength building and really capitalizing on strengths that they already have. Some couples, and lots of them, have come to me saying, look, we're about to file papers. We just want to know that we've given it everything we can, but our relationship is pretty much over. And I've had the blessing of really navigating some deep pain in those relationships and seeing those marriages restored.
Wow.
That's a pretty incredible process, and certainly a humbling position for me to be able to be in, just to witness that, to help restore what they thought they'd lost between each other. So, and those definitely fall into the therapy category.
Sure.
Where we're really doing some deep work.
So in today's world, I'm assuming you do sessions via Zoom and Skype, and do people physically still come see you? I'm sure they do, but it's just I guess in today's world, and not just because of the pandemic, but before that, are you doing more coaching sessions like this where there's people all over the country?
Yes, actually, I love doing online sessions, and that's what a lot of my clients are preferring now, especially now when we have to. But it's so convenient for people, and they're in their own home oftentimes, and that brings a certain authenticity that you don't sometimes get in the office. And
Right.
so I find that they're often more productive and more meaningful because you don't have the sort of pretense that comes when somebody's coming into the office.
Right.
And it's a much more comfortable setting. If they have children, they don't have to go through those complications. But there's really a way to connect with people even through the screen, and sometimes in a deeper way, which is ironic. We think that it's going to be distancing, but it really allows for a lot more transparency. And this crisis is bringing up so many issues for people that it's even more important that I'm able to be there for them through it.
Well, it's interesting. Someone told me yesterday that the percentages, domestic violence has gone up. The percentage of domestic violence has gone up. Suicide rates have gone up. Third piece is alcohol sales have gone up 55% during this period. So when you think about, I guess, this concept, because there's a lot of variables that are going on here. Obviously, everyone's safety, distancing, not sharing I was raised by a nurse, so I get a lot of my information from her and my doctor, Stephen Hotze in Houston, Texas, about, I go there versus the news. And a lot of people go to the news, but I go to sources I trust about the transport of the virus. But other than that, there's also real stress that's being added to small business owners around the country who, in my business, I speak for a living. And when you can't speak, that's a line of your business that you can't go out and do. When people are scared to take action on coaching that they need, when small business owners are having to lay people off. I mean, there's an emotional tax that's coming along with this pandemic that if you've never owned a small business, well, I guess you don't know the stress of that, number one. Payroll and knowing that people are counting on you and families could be laid off, but also on the workers of not potentially having a job, right? So my theory is right now is when you actually need coaching during this transition cycle. I remember going through a tough transition years ago, and I read William Bridges' book on transitions, which I thought was incredibly helpful, talking about an ending of something, a disorientation period, and then a new beginning. That one book really helped me through that transition. And then I've used that cycle over and over and over again. So speak to the emotional tax that people are facing right now, and how can they mentally toughen up during this period so that they can make it through it?
Yes, you are so right. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners who are really feeling it on so many levels, because when you're a successful entrepreneur, your soul is involved.
Mm-hmm.
By definition, I believe it's very difficult to be successful otherwise. And so I think what I've explained is if there were cracks in the foundation, something like this is going to be like putting another structure on a cracked foundation in a building. You know, it's going to magnify it. It's going to put a lot more strain in areas you didn't even know were weak. But that's also where I can come in, and people like you can come in, Coach Burt, to really help fortify that, give them the tools. So I've tried to use this tool where I say you need to pay attention to being grounded in your body, your mind, and your spirit. Absolutely, without question, that has to be a part of every day with your daily routine, with really edifying your spirit, eating well. Surround yourself. The second one is stay surrounded by positive messages, not an overabundance of news that's a lot more drama than it is accuracy. And I think that that's really important. Listen to positive messages, laugh a little bit, have some memory making. You know, there can be some times that you remember fondly in this time, and then staying connected to your family, to your friends, to those positive people in your life who really will speak truth to you. Because what's wonderful is that so many people in our space, Coach, and influencers are out there really giving amazing free information about how to pivot, about how to still grow your business, about how to weather this storm. And I think that's an area that people really need to tap into. Watch more of that than you do of the news. Get your facts and then move on to what's really going to help you come out stronger. Because whether you return to the same business model or family model or not, you can return there in a much stronger position and go even higher as a result of that. But it's all in the way you cope. And I am heartbroken when I read the statistics about domestic violence, because that is just a natural consequence, and people are trapped in that situation. They need to reach out for help.
Yep.
You know, they need to call a hotline. Don't stay in isolation in that. And I think the same goes true for people who really feel like there's no other solution than to end this life. There's the suicide prevention hotline that is always there, and there is no shame that happens over that phone line. You call in and you are treated as a valuable person who understandably is in a lot of pain. And so there is never a shame or belittling that comes with that. And I think with more use of alcohol and substances, it's about numbing out. Just recognize that any emotion that comes up for you, any opponent, whether it's a problem or it's a thought or it's a feeling, is something that you can have power over. There isn't anything that enters your life that's going to overpower you if you're determined not to let it. You know, and for you and I know that comes from a God who is far greater than us. And if people don't believe in the God we do, you know, that it's recognizing there is that higher power. They don't have to be beholden to that. And it's about really getting a visual. I say, imagine your foot on the chest of someone who is trying to invade your home. Right. That's what you need to do to that negative emotion and that negative thought.
Right. Well, the number one commandment throughout the Bible is do not fear, right? And trying to tell people that fear is an emotion, you know, an unpleasant emotion that caused by a belief that something's going to harm us in the future. And I've been telling people that fear creates worry creates stress creates disease. The number one killer of people in the United States is stress. Absolutely. It's stress. So let's finish with this one. This is kind of the big question, okay? Because I get asked this question a lot, and I'm fascinated to hear what you have to say about it. Some people believe that some people just have something that you cannot put in them and you cannot take it out of them, i.e., they were born to win, produce, whatever. What's your personal belief on nature versus nurture?
Well, I believe that we were all created with a gift to give to the world.
Yes.
I think that, you know, regardless of what we grew up in, certainly that can help propel us if it was particularly easy, but I think it can propel us no matter what. It's all in how we approach it here. and hear. You know, that I believe that there is greatness inside of everyone. It just doesn't look the same. And I think that this is an opportunity, if we all step into our greatness, no matter what that is, whether it's raising beautiful children who make a difference in the world, or whether that's speaking to millions. It's about using this as an opportunity to tap into that side of yourself. And at the end of it, say, who do I want to become at the end of this? You know, regardless of what's standing in front of them. So I think it can be a beautiful marriage of the two of those things, appreciating what is nature about you, what is innate in you, and providing yourself with the nurturing to make that come out in its most beautiful form. And I think the world could only be an even better place if we were all able to do that within ourselves and realize we had the capacity to do it.
Nice. Nice. Well, you are certainly pleasant to deal with, and I want to thank you for being so positive. And Amy Van Slambrook, where can people find out more about you? Because there's probably people watching this that may want to have, have you as their coach, right? And have you help them. And so where can people find out a little bit more about you?
Well, I am on all the socials, Instagram, especially at my name, Amy Van Slambrook, and it's a lot simpler than it looks on paper. I'm going to be having a group coaching program for women that is really going to be wonderful to help them get stronger through crisis. So reach out to me about that, and everything is on my website, amyvanslambrook.com.
Nice. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon on Person of Interest. You know, many years ago when I wrote that book, Person of Interest, I didn't know it would turn into a podcast and give me the ability to spend time with some of the greatest thought leaders in the world. So thank you for the work that you're doing. God bless you. And you've been of great value to our audience today.
Thank you so much, Coach Burt. It's really been my honor.
All right. Have a great day, and thank you.